So I started Fortnite Save the World about a month ago and spent a good 3 solid weeks playing through the first 2 out of 4 available areas of the game. Overall, I quite like the game, and if I didn't, I wouldn't have spent so much time on it. However, there are some key issues that make me doubt that a public launch of this game will be any sort of success. Overall, Save the World is this combination of PvE and tower defense. You take on the role of a commander in a sort of post-apocalyptic world and must accomplish various collection and protection missions to expand your base of operations, improve your stats, and recruit survivors, all while taking on waves upon waves of zombies called husks. For the first 2 areas, your missions are directly related to the storyline and victories move the plot forward. Unfortunately, the game's storyline pretty much stops at the end of Area 2 with a very vague explanation. After Area 2, your trusted robot sidekick tells you to have fun and that they'll see you later. You can definitely level up to unlock and play through Areas 3 and 4, it's just that there's no storyline narration to add context to your missions. That doesn't mean that the latter half of the game is unplayable, it's just very odd to see a game that so directly states that they simply don't have a story worked out past a certain point. Considering that Save the World came out in 2014, I gotta wonder what the heck happened. Speaking of plot, its existence is kind of the only thing that keeps Save the World from becoming a farming simulator with zombies. You don't literally farm in the game, you loot, but the overall effect is the same. If there's no story justifying your missions, the game quickly devolves into a grinding machine. And grinding is so ingrained into the game that Save the World is really a thinly veiled Skinner box. There are definitely redeeming qualities, like weapons that make the game fun and great voice acting that make characters endearing, but as far as skill progression, daily missions, challenges, and loot llamas go, oh boy does this game want you to spend as much time as possible on it. The most obvious example is in the game's so-called research points that generate at a set rate per hour with a limit on how many points can be left uncollected before the auto-generation stops. The game is pretty sly about increasing how many points are generated per hour and how many total points can be left uncollected, but honestly, this entire system is pretty much a way to get players to log in at least once a day to collect those points, even if they can't immediately use them. Additionally, the game provides a variety of side missions with highly coveted rewards. The catch is, some are either temporary, with limited time associated loot, some are daily missions with a max of 3 at a time, meaning you definitely have to finish at least 1 every 3 days or miss out. And some are very basic elimination and rescue challenges but are literally always the same and just increase in increments of 5 when the previous batch is completed. So while the game is defendable for the first 2 areas where the story exists, everything after that is just grind. Grind for the limited time gun, grind for the limited time hero, grind daily for V-Bucks you can use in Battle Royale. Grind, grind, and grind some more. Except, you can't grind in easier areas. The experience you get from doing a mission at your level versus one lower is huge. And that's despite having automatic experience boosts that the game gives you and ones you and your teammates can stack. There are gonna be a lot of pissed off veteran players that will get nothing from playing with their noob friends once this game goes free to play. But speaking of levels, they actually don't matter that much. The game does have a concept of player level, but it is the individual's power level that actually matters. But players boost each other's power level when grouped together anyway, so the entire concept of player level is just there to separate missions into green, yellow, orange, and red difficulty categories. Or gray, which means that they are too low level for you to get anything worthwhile. So this basically means that, despite doing missions, you can't really visualize the gained experience. It doesn't reflect on your level. Instead, your experience is collected towards ability points that you can then use to unlock and upgrade abilities or overall stats like defense and health regeneration. Your power level is then calculated based on how upgraded your heroes, survivors, and defenders are, and you upgrade these by, you guessed it, grinding for upgrade points. I don't know about you, but I'm sensing a pattern here. At the same time, I won't give the game too much flack. I think it's incredibly transparent in telling you that you will have to do the same missions on the same maps over and over again to, quote-unquote, level up. Unfortunately, I know some people will be putting a ridiculous amount of time into the game simply because they want the limited time guns and heroes. Speaking of guns, this is the part that I found quite enjoyable. I really like the types of weaponry and traps available in this game. Although you can only equip and use 3 weapons at a time, you can make and keep however many you want, just switch them out whenever. Unused or useless weapons can always be recycled, so there's really no detriment in using resources to craft new weapons you want to try out. Eventually, everyone finds a few that they like and they stick with them. But since I get bored quick, I really appreciate being able to upgrade, create, and carry different pistols, rifles, snipers, etc. The same goes for traps, but since they're one use only, you kind of just end up collecting all that you find and using them in those same missions. Every once in a while, what you have on you can change the game. You can very well find yourself on a mission scrambling for trap materials because no one else has any and you're at max mission difficulty. Alternatively, sometimes you find yourself on a mission where everyone is loaded on zappers and you barely need to lift a finger on defense. But you don't always get to have teammates in this game. Everything except the early tutorial levels allow you to have up to 3 teammates, but sometimes you get stuck doing missions alone anyway. I've run into this when playing in the middle of the night, playing at higher difficulty, or simply getting grouped with the occasional trolls. Not having anyone to group with in the middle of the night shows just how small the player base is. It's a fairly known issue for higher level players to not have anyone to group with in areas 3 and 4, simply because there's so very few players with levels high enough to participate. And since the story ends in Area 2, many players simply drop the game and never even make it to 3 or 4 anyway. So those high level players tend to stick around at Area 2 just so that they can have someone to play with. So not only does the story itself stagnate by cutting off, but the player base also has very little reason to move forward. Once again, I have no idea how Epic plans to resolve this once the game goes free to play. Speaking of going free, the community will be greatly influenced by this and not necessarily in a positive fashion. See, pretty much everyone who currently plays the game is playing it out of genuine curiosity and interest. They put money into it. But once it's free, sure, more players means filled missions, but it also means more AFKers, trolls, and scammers and scamming victims. There's really no way to get monetarily scammed in the game, but you can definitely get tricked out of valuable loot, especially if you're a kid. At most, this only sets you back from crafting strong weapons. However, the experience of getting scammed in and of itself can just lead to a less than pleasant community. I personally look forward to my friends joining, but considering the current, basically unfinished state of the game, I can't even really recommend it. Speaking of unfinished, the lack of story in areas 3 and 4 is pretty much the only place where the game can be described as unfinished. Everything else is smooth and plays well. The controls are tight, maps are generated well, difficulty progression is good, voice acting is superb, and husks make for good enemies. In the 3-ish weeks that I played this, there were only a handful of times that I came across glitches, and only 2 times where the glitch affected the gameplay. One time, a husk spawned inside a mountain, preventing the squad from completing the elimination-based mission. Another time, a player went AFK on an asset that can be spawned and ended up stuck inside for the rest of the match. Ultimately, we were still victorious, but being a player down made it more difficult. Some of the other glitches include things spawning in incorrect places or simply not despawning and floating midair. Another time, a husk lost his aggro on me and fell asleep in the middle of a fight. Frankly, most of these glitches are kind of funny and let you peek into how they must have been programmed to have reached this state. Speaking of funny, Ray, your friendly robot sidekick, is hands down the best part of the game. Ray takes the role of the guide and narrator of the game and story. She's the one that sends you on missions and give context to events.
Oh wow, that is terrible. I stand corrected, wow. Oh great, they're in space too.
She also likes to meddle in romantic affairs of other characters and simply brings so much life to the game as a whole. But as I mentioned earlier, she disappears after Area 2. Yes, there's a sort of explanation for her departure, but her lack of presence makes the game so meh. There was a huge part of me that was so heartbroken to find this out when I hit Area 3. However, her voice actor, Ashley Birch, returned to narrate the current in-game event, so I'm beyond happy to hear that she's still on the payroll. But Ray isn't the only character with prominent personality, she's just the one with the most prominent personality. There's also Lars and Penny and Dennis, and they are all superb individual characters. For a game that has like one cutscene and no direct interaction between the player and other story characters, it is extremely impressive to be able to establish and convey such varied characters through one-way dialogue. This is precisely why I'm emphasizing that the story ends before the game does, because the story hands down makes the game. Having characters you care about and care about people that they care about is the driving force for what you are doing in this post-apocalyptic world. Without their stories, fears, and hopes, this game would be so boring and so dry. I'm sure there are plenty of people that feel otherwise, especially those that are happy to grind for no story reason, but for me, Ray and the others absolutely made the game. The heroes you can play as also have individual personas. They're not quite as deep as those you find in like Overwatch, but there's just enough personality to each hero model to make players have favorites and take care and try not to get knocked down. They're somewhere between NPCs and RPG protagonists. The heroes don't have a role in the story itself, so they're still blank slate enough for players to be able to project themselves onto them. However, they have their own lines and quirks. As such, it's actually interesting and engaging to level up other heroes and take them out for a spin. Eventually, you still settle on a favorite, but the simple ability to switch and play around as someone else is pretty fun. I personally prefer the ninja class. I think their double jump ability is irreplaceable since getting swarmed in this game is an actual threat. The convenience of the double jump is pretty much unmatched in my opinion. Not only does it save a ridiculous amount of material, but you can also use it to buy reload time, get out of sticky situations, or simply run away where the husks can't follow. Overall, I quite enjoyed the game, more so towards the beginning when there was an actual story to follow, but it's still something that I like to spend time on once in a while. I appreciate the fact that even within my measly 3 weeks of play, I've seen Epic focus quite a bit on improving quality of life within the game. I really do appreciate that they're still thinking of and working on Save the World despite Battle Royale's enormous success. However, there are still a handful of changes I would like to see rolled out. First, devs, if you want to put a hero into a white outfit, there are plenty of ways to show grime and wear and tear without designing shit-stained pants, okay? Second, increased variation to map design would be nice. Despite a decent chunk of the game relying on looting and farming, it's, in my opinion, within the game's best interest to maintain a sense of curiosity by making the maps more varied. I've played it for 3 weeks and I know every possible hidden location and cavern spawn point. Make it worth my time to explore. In addition to that, make each area environmentally different. It was such a letdown to see the different landscapes in Area 2 and 3 for just the Storm Shield defense missions. I thought the story progressed to an entirely different area. Nope, I basically just moved a neighborhood over. In fact, I would like to see more variation in general. For a game where literally everything is lootable, there are surprisingly few things you can actually find. I don't mean like increase the necessary quantity of particular materials to craft a weapon or a trap, because some of the ratios are already weird. I mean, add some super rare non-story related items like jewels or flowers. Let players trade them in for loot currency or experience points, because otherwise I, who loots everything I can press E on, ends up very bored with being able to press E on everything. Especially since I can just send out squads to get me all sorts of basic materials anyway. Every time a player joins a mission, there should be something worth uncovering and looting on that map that isn't malachite, or obsidian, or insert item exclusive to that area here. Missions could also use some variation. It's already a serious giveaway telling players where the husk waves will come from. And the waves are pretty much always the same. Yes, there are special husks that spawn and mini-bosses that can get in the way, but for the most part, the fights are easily predictable and riggable. Make it challenging. Make it noticeably harder when the mission difficulty is increased. I'll concede that maybe I'm still too low level to see the full force of what husks can bring on, but the only time I felt challenged has been either when teammates disconnected halfway through, or I was soloing missions meant for a full squad. Because of how many missions players end up doing and how many interactions they have with mist monsters during those missions, it all gets tired and boring real quick. If you want to keep me grinding, just as your Skinner box skill setup suggests, you better be tossing new monsters and new obstacles at my face weekly, if not daily. Because each time I remember that there is no story left for me to experience, I realize just how trite your game really is. So those are basically my thoughts on Fortnite Save the World. I look forward to seeing what Epic will add upon the game's release and how they will try to resolve the current flaws. I quite enjoyed my time in the game and feel like I got my money's worth, but I can't quite bring myself to recommend it to anyone instead of suggesting they wait for the free-to-play release. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.